Well, hello everyone. Welcome to week one of curriculum design. I hope you are all doing well, and I look forward to having you in this class. If you have not accessed the syllabus yet, make sure that you do. I have it set up so that you ask permission. That way I know that everybody has checked in and they're ready to go. And I wanted to just talk briefly to you before you work with your pair share partner tomorrow night. Remember that the live virtual is from 6 to 7:30, but if you and your partner decide that you want to start a little later due to home or school commitments, that's fine with me. I've already had somebody contact me that was unable to make tomorrow night's meeting. Just remember that if that's the case, you need to reschedule with your partner, and it needs to be all right with your partner as well. This is new to the online construction at Concordia. In fact, curriculum instruction do not have the live virtual put in yet. So this is, like I said, this is all new, and all of your instructors are trying out different ways of communicating. Collaboration is very big for me, one-on-one, small groups. It's good for us to be able to talk about ideas and talk with your peers. A lot of times you don't get a set time to, sit down and really consider thoughts with each other and just have quiet moments. Full class sometimes can be really overwhelming, and what happens is some people share and some people don't, just like in the classroom. So one-on-one provides you that opportunity. Just a few notes before we get started. I hope you watched the video on TED Talks with Sir Ken Robinson. If you're not familiar with him, he's a fantastic public speaker, very smart. There's lots of TED Talks with him. But three of the things that are really noticeable when Ken speaks are things that we like to see in the classroom that we all enjoy as well. He uses humor, of course, to keep people's attention. He's a great storyteller. And I'm sure you noticed his cadence, the way he pauses, his comic timing. It makes it enjoyable to learn something from someone like him. And we see the same thing in the classroom. It's how he makes you feel. He makes you feel happy to be there, happy to be listening, and enjoying the topic. It's vibrant, and it holds your attention. And I just want to go over a few of the things that he said that are specifically, affect me when I listen. First off, I want to start with my own story. Today at our school, and I'm sure some of you in the high school level went through this as well, we had a whole school SAT, PSAT day. And I think it's very wonderful that, we now have it in education that students are able to take this test for free in their high school, that they're offered this opportunity, and it takes some pressure off, and it levels the playing field, and that's wonderful. But one of the problems I see with it is there's such a big push for all students to take this test. And it's not really something that works for all students at the same time, okay? And you all know this. So in my classroom, I had a whole mixed group of students, and I had one student who was in a special day class who came to me, and she was not rude or disrespectful in any way, but she walked in. She felt very overwhelmed by 4 hours of straight testing and sitting. She wanted to charge her phone. She wanted to text on her phone. She wanted to listen to music on her phone. She wanted to know if she absolutely had to do this. And of course, after quite a bit of time for frustration for her, she said, "May I please leave? May I please leave?" As kind as could be. And I said, "You know what? Why don't you step outside for a minute and let's get hold of Miss Chastain," that's her teacher. And I said, "and let's see what we can do about this." And Miss Chastain and her parents opted for her to not take this SAT test at this time. I emailed Miss Chastain and I said, "Thank you for stepping in this situation." And I was talking about the student's name. She had this really interesting name. And if some of you read your Meet the Instructor, then you know that I'm a writer, professional writer as well as an educator. And I said, I would love to use that name as a character. It's such a great name. Well, at break time, this student who I've never seen before, never met before, came back and her face was all lit up. And she said, Miss Wood, Miss Chastain was saying how much you love my name, that you would love to use it in one of your stories. And she's like, I'm a writer too. And she started going on. She was all sparked. She was all bubbly. She was all lit up at the fact that she was a writer, that we were writers together, that we were a community, and that it didn't have anything to do with this PSAT test, okay? It had to do with something, this creative spark inside her. If you study writers, artists, the things that Ken Robinson talks about, we see this time and time again. Some of you are familiar with Gary Paulson. He wrote Hatchet. In 6th grade, he went to a librarian and he said, I don't like school, I'm not good at school, okay? And he really was struggling with school. And he was struggling with learning disabilities. And this librarian convinced him to keep reading. And he said, I'd really like to write, but I don't think I can. I've learned in school that I can't. And she said, yes, you can. He's an award-winning author right now. I'm sure you guys have heard of Where the Red Fern Grows. Same thing. Rawlings believed his book was hidden in a box in an attic for years because he felt that his spelling and his grammar were not up to snuff. His wife found it and said, this needs to be published. She helped him edit it, and we have a classic. We see this time and time again with education. And luckily, we're in a time period in education where we're starting to see the shift. And dependent on how long you have been in the Concordia MIAT program, you're seeing the shift in what you're learning. In brain-based research in Fall 1, the class that I just taught, we were talking about Fisher and Frey and Kagan and all of this research now that says art should be involved as much as possible, storytelling, humor, movement, singing, that all of these things help students to learn and help the brain. And we know that education is not always set up that way. And one of the hard things about education is that we all bring the cool things too, but one of the hard things is we all bring our own philosophy of education with us. And remember what Ken said. He says that education goes deep with people. And we all learn to value different things brought on by religion, by parents, by community, by what we've learned in schools. And I remember when I was growing up, my family's philosophy, we valued a lot of things in education. My parents highly valued the arts. All of my brothers and sisters, we play multiple instruments. We all sing, we all dance, we all write. But my parents also valued sports. We played sports. They valued reading. We were allowed to watch TV and all of those things, but we read, and when we went to bed at night, you had something that you read yourself to sleep to. They also valued pop cultural references. My family is big at doing movie lines. Maybe you come from a family like that as well, you know, where you can't, if you say, you know, Shirley, you know, are you being serious? You can't even say that in my house because you know what's going to happen. It's going to be an airplane reference. Yes, I am serious, and don't call me Shirley. So all of these things create this philosophy that we have that's individualized. And one of the struggles we have as educators is how do we get our philosophy to meet with other philosophies without it being a clash? How do we find a way to combine or to bend or to mold? Well, the things that we have to look at as best practices related to research. And we have to be willing to bend if there truly is a best practice. And that's not always easy. And a lot of times in education, we don't see best practice. We see system. So we have to work towards that and work towards fitting in it while still keeping our individuality. Something else that Ken Robinson said that I always think of is when he talks about Picasso. And Picasso saying all children are born artists, and basically, you know, they have to find a way to continue to be artists, that they're educated out of it. That's another thing that I see in my class often. I just asked my students to do a project where on their portfolios they were supposed to draw images or words or symbols that represented them. And I always have 2 or 3 people say, I can't draw. And I always say back, yes, you can. You can. Somebody just beat it out of you somewhere. And there's probably people in this class right now going, but I can't draw. You can. And one of the things in education that we're seeing is we're seeing this movement now more back to the whole child based on specific research, and things that were often considered hippie-like or free-flowing are now becoming things that we are integrating into our classroom. Collaborative conversations, movement, storytelling. Even the new Pearson English books that we've received in the state of California and in several of the large districts have storytelling units because it is a valuable commodity. Today, in the workforce, what I'm doing with you right now, in the classroom, in life in general, it's communication. I thought that it was very interesting when he talks about the hierarchy around the world of math and science being on the top and arts being on the bottom, and dance and theater actually, you know, being last. And I thought that it was interesting that he said that he sees this from around the world and that it's, you know, it doesn't change from culture to culture. And that's something that we need to think about. The university professor, when he talks about that, you know, that it's valued. Not everybody's choosing to be a university professor. And I actually had a fellow teacher just a while back. I was really kind of surprised at the elitist attitude of it. He was standing outside, and he was, I guess somebody had teased him or chided him somewhere, not at school, at home, about not being able to fix something. And he got very lofty, and he said, I'm educating the youth of America. I don't need to be a blue-collar worker. And I actually was stunned and felt like it was a bit of a slap across the face. And I didn't say anything at that moment. I always think it's best to wait and calm down before you react. 24 hours is always best. So I did wait, and I consider this colleague a friend, and I respect this colleague. And I stated, I said, you know, blue collar is really not a term that, you know, we use anymore. And I said, you know, people that can build things have just as much value as people who are educating. And I feel very grateful that my parents put a huge emphasis on that as well. We were taught to work on cars. We were taught to do construction. My grandfather worked at the Long Beach shipyard. My father in the Coast Guard was one of the top agents at the time that worked at all of the prisons, maintaining all of the lighthouses. So we learned a lot about mechanics, lock mechanisms, all sorts of things. And I was just so shocked that this person said this, because education is about knowing this vast amount of knowledge, and not just being school smart, and not just being street smart, and not just being mechanical, and not just being artistic. It's that whole picture. And we know that we have to find these things in our children. And it just brings me back to today with that student who I'm sure many people think is not living up to their idea of education, coming to me and saying, I'm a writer. I'm a writer. So we need to think about these things as teachers. When you're talking about your educational philosophy tonight, you need to think about the things that you value, and also how to incorporate the things that the kids value within lessons, within your curriculum design. Things that make them feel like they're part of the whole and not excluded based on what they might want to do when they grow up. outside of being a university professor. I think that's about it for Ken Robinson and philosophy. I wanted to read you a short quote out of the Ornstein chapters. Hang on one second. The computer's being very slow in opening this. Come on. There we go. Okay. I just wanted to read this quick little bit here because it reminded me of what we're talking about tonight. Our philosophy reflects our background and experiences. Our decisions are based on our worldview, attitudes, and beliefs. Philosophy guides action. The world of curriculum is always changing, and based upon your background and beliefs, you may feel more than one philosophy is correct for curriculum, or you may agree with all of the philosophies. One statement that will always remain the same regardless of what your philosophy is: philosophy is central to curriculum. I hope you have a good night. I hope this talk gave you a little bit to think about. I look forward to receiving your short overview summaries from your conversation with you and your partner. And I look forward to reading your discussion boards in week 2. Please contact me if you need to. It's best to contact me by text or email. I'm very fast. You can ask. I've already emailed with several people. Phone call if you're really, really stressing about something, but don't stress. You can't learn well when you stress. You know that. We'll figure it out together. I'm looking forward to being your instructor for this 8-week session. And the next virtual session will be small group. So we'll change it up for our 4 sessions, and hopefully you'll get a lot out of it. And have a good night. I'll talk to you later.